Come and join me as we dive into the world of careers, uncovering the reality behind the job titles you've always wondered about and how you can chart your path to success. Whether you're starting out or dreaming of a new role, I'm here to guide you. Real talk, real jobs, real insight, providing career clarity, one conversation at a time. Welcome to Work Uncovered. Hi, I'm Terri Homans, career consultant and founder of Curated Careers. In today's episode, we're going to step behind the lens for a sneak peek into the world of film and television. Today I'm speaking with Annie Kinnane, a producer and production manager in the Australian film industry with almost 3 decades of experience across TV commercials, film and television. Annie has worked with major clients, studios, streamers and independent producers, managing the budgets, crew, logistics and schedules that turn a script into the physical product that we eventually see on our screens. She's also the founder of Film Freelancers, a Gold Coast-based crew directory created to help local screen professionals and suppliers become more visible to incoming productions. Alongside her production work, Annie is a certified NLP coach supporting producers, actors and crew to think more intentionally about their careers and the kind of work they want to build. Annie, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Very happy to be here.
I'm very happy to have you here too. All right. Now, I've just talked about describing your role as turning a script into a physical product, something that we can actually watch.
Yes.
What does that mean in practice?
That's what producers essentially do. They take a thought or a concept and they have that turned into a script by a script writer and then bring in, various crew along the way then to take that from the invisible idea into something that people can watch on screen and share as an audience. A lot of people really just think the film industry or TV industry is just so nebulous. And so I compare it to the building industry. And what I say is, you think about the architects. The architects are the ones that dream up the plans and then they draw the plans and then the project people come along, the builders, and they build a physical product. And so we're a very similar industry. There's a concept and then the scriptwriters turn that into a written word on a page and then production people come along and then turn that into something you watch on a screen.
So for people outside of the industry, which is going to be a lot of people watching this,
Yes.
Can you tell us what the difference is between a producer and a production manager?
Sure. I mean, the producer, if you've ever watched the Academy Awards, the producers are the ones that go up on stage and they win the best picture. A production manager is more like a project manager. So the producers are there from the very start, the germination of the idea, right through to post-production and then marketing and distribution. Whereas the production manager comes on board for the middle bit where you've got the green light and then you're actually doing the production, shooting, locations, filming actors in studios, et cetera, and delivering that to post-production. So there's actually a reason why I'm both a screen producer and a production manager, because years and years in development as a producer is not necessarily the way I like to work. I like it when we've got the money and it's like we've got the green light. Go turn this into a physical product, whether it's something you're watching on TV through one of the streamers or a film that's going into the cinemas. So producers are there from the very beginning, way out to the marketing and distribution, and years later, when they're still following up the legals, the film or project might actually be making some money, and then you've got to distribute any of the profits or funds back to your investors. Whereas the production manager, I'm in and out in the middle bit.
Okay. So when a production is in its initial stages, what are the first practical things that you're looking to work out? How does that unfold for you?
There's various stages of production. So there's development. So in development, that's when the producers, they go, okay, we want to turn this this idea into a script, into a project. And so some of the first people on are your legals team, because you have to have all of your legals in place right from the very, very beginning. And then if you're developing a script, you'll bring in script writers. You might start to look at bringing in some executive producers. Executive producers are the money people. Either they bring money to the table or they bring cast to the table that can trigger finance. So this all happens in development. Then also getting financing. So it's not until you get financing that you start to kick into what we call pre-pre, which is when you get a line producer on. You start to, schedule the script, because until you've had somebody do the budget for the script, based on the schedule of how many days you're going to shoot for, you don't really know finally what your budget, your bottom line budget's going to be. Because you can imagine, if I've got 120 pages in a script and it's about a minute per page in a script, if I've got 150 pages, then that's going to cost a lot more. It's going to take a lot more time to shoot. If I've got 90 pages in a script, probably, that's a third less of the budget. So that all happens very early in the piece. Then once you've got your budget sorted, you've got your schedule sorted, you get your finance. Now that's what we call a greenlit project. And then you start to bring on more crew. You bring on your production managers, you bring on your production designer, your costume designers, all those people that are then the creators that are going to execute, and the director, of course, or directors if it's a series and we're filming in blocks. And then once you have all the creators on board, then they start to bring in their department crew. So as a production manager, I'm going to put on my production office. The costume designer is going to put on their costume team. The production designer is going to put on their art director and their art department team, stunts, safety, so on, so on. So then all the departments come in, and then we go into production. So from pre-pre to pre-production, all the preparation, and now we're going into production, which is where we actually start to film, going into locations or filming in a studio. And once all that's done, once that's all in the can, then it's passed off to the editorial team for post-production. So it goes through, every project goes through all of those stages of development, pre-production, post-production, and then marketing distribution.
Okay. So once production is up and active and you're in that actual production phase.
The fun bit, yes.
And I know there's no typical week, but what does an ordinary week look like for you? Could you break that down? What kinds of problems would you be solving in once you're in that block of production?
Yeah, so when we're in pre-production, that's when we're bringing all the crew on. So I'd be searching for the crew. Sometimes the departments have specific crew that they want me to approach first. Other times it's me finding the crew that might be suitable for that role. Doing negotiations with the camera house as to what equipment we're going to use. Negotiating with the grip, the gaffer, as to what equipment they're going to need. Does that fit into the budget? And this is, as a production manager, this is generally always in association with the line producer, because the line producer is responsible for bringing home that budget, whereas the production manager is responsible for working with the line producer around budget, but generally I'm running the day-to-day operations of the production and the production office. We're the central hub for communication for everything that's happening during pre-production. And then we're on a countdown. So say we've got 8 weeks of pre-production before we've got 8 weeks of shoot. In pre-production, we're always counting down. So it's pre-8, pre-7, pre-6, pre-5, pre-4, pre-3, pre-2, pre-1, and then we're filming. So once you start counting down, you basically have to work in a just-in-time process. So what needs to be done today, you've got to do today, because you can't leave what needs to be done in pre-8 to pre-2 because you won't be ready for your shoot, when you're up to shoot week 1. So we're always in the countdown during pre-production. And then once we start filming, it becomes a lot more consistent then, because you've got your on-set team that are out working on location or working in a studio. They're providing documentation back that then my team collate. And then, we're reporting back to the producers, to the investors, to the bond company. And then that becomes, we're producing a call sheet every day that goes to the crew for the next day's filming. Once they've filmed, then we create a daily production report, which is what we've done the day before. So that becomes a bit more predictable, because, as you're filming each day, you're doing fairly similar things each day. But in pre-production, it's like organized chaos.
I was going to say, it definitely sounds like a continually evolving beast. Like, it seems like everybody might just constantly be on the edge of their seats going, am I up? What's next? That's the feel I get. Am I wrong there, or does it have a bit of that about it?
Look, we try to reduce that as much as possible, Terri, because the way a shoot goes, the way your production goes, depends on how well organized you are in your pre-production. So we have many schedule meetings, when the director's first working with their creative team, sourcing locations or sourcing costumes or working out what the makeup's going to be like. All of that is done with mood boards. Like, everybody's on the same page before anything is purchased or any location locked in. So all of that pre-work is to make sure that there are no, real surprises that come up in the production, because there's a lot of randomness that comes up during the production, so far as weather, or an actor gets sick, or an actor's not available because next minute, they've pulled an audition with Steven Spielberg and they're flying to America. So there's all these kind of crazy things that get thrown at you during production. So that's why, as much as possible, we have everything signed off. Everybody's on the same page. Like in that last week in particular of pre-production, we do all our camera tests. We put actors 1, 2, 3, 4 in front of the camera in their costumes, in their makeup. We've done read-throughs with the actors numerous times. They've all met each other. They've bonded with the director. And then for the crew, we've checked all the camera equipment. The camera department's been in with the camera house for a week or 2, making sure that all the lenses are correct, all the focal lengths are correct. We've got location recce's. So all of our crew, all the heads of department, the HODs, and their 2 ICs, their second in charge, we all go out in minibuses and we look at all the different locations so that none of the decision makers are showing up for the first time. So I'd like to think that we're much more organized than maybe what it looks like from the outside. But all of the sets will have been planned to be finished and constructed in relation to the schedule. Same with the costumes, same with the casting. We can't go into shoot day 1 if we haven't got all the casts that are required for shoot day 1. So we have, days out of days schedules for the actors. So if we've got to bring them in from interstate or overseas, we know when they're required by. We know when we're going to send them home by. So we really are planned down to the absolute finite detail of, like, once we start filming, what time's an actor being picked up? You'll know on the call sheet. It's like what time they're going to arrive to the unit base, what time they're going into makeup, what time they're going into costume, what time they're going to have their breakfast. So by the time we're preparing call sheets, there's probably 90% of what we require already in that call sheet. And then it's that flexible 10%. Oh, we didn't get that shot from the day before. We've got to whack that into the next day, or, otherwise that cast member's going to go home. So there's always this slip that goes on, but if it's any more than about 10% from a day to day, then everybody gets called, everyone, just the decision makers relevant get called into meetings. And sometimes we have meetings over lunch to say, we've got to troubleshoot this. But generally we are very, very well planned.
Understood. Now, you've mentioned a lot of moving parts there.
Yes.
And for most of us, just the regular film goer or the TV watcher, we think actors, directors, camera crew, writers. What are some of the less visible jobs, which there are massive amounts that keep a production running, that most people, unless they're really sort of into film or whatever, just aren't even considering? What are they?
Sure. And I think that's one of the reasons why I use the building industry as an analogy for what we do, because, to say the building industry is just about architects and people that put the furniture in, like who made the furniture? Like who makes all those little bits that go on the taps? Like, who got the cupboard doors into, a 22-story shell to build out the apartment? Like every single job, basically, that is out, I'm going to say in the real world, you know what I mean? Like from accountants to secretaries, electricians, carpenters. We have drivers that drive the cars around. We've got caterers, hairdressers, designers. Pretty much every job that exists outside of the film industry exists inside the film industry. My husband, he's been in the film industry 50 years, and he always likes to say it takes a village to make a film, or, a TV series, or a television commercial even. So, yes, there's...
That's like more than a village.
Maybe more than a village, maybe a couple of villages. But that's why I strongly suggest that people watch the credits. And I also, implore people, if they're interested in the film industry, you must go to the cinema. You must see film on the big screen and have that experience, and then stay for the credits. And, my hubby and I, we go to the movies pretty much every Tuesday night. And we'll sit there and we'll watch the credits to see, where was this made? Like, was it Scotland with Ireland? Like, there's some post-production there from Australia. What is that position? Well, I've never even heard of what that position does. And, I'll go home and I'll Google it. So you've got to be really curious, I think, to be in the film industry. And just know that pretty much whatever skills you have, if you're a diesel mechanic or you're a carpenter, you're a makeup artist, or you're a caterer or you're a barista, every single one of those jobs has a job on a film set as well.
Yeah. And the reason I asked that was because I really wanted to highlight that if you think maybe you're interested in film or TV, you could be doing something that you think is so unrelated, but in fact is needed in film and TV. So if the film industry is like building a temporary company for every new production, what departments need to exist within that company?
Okay, so there's generally the production department, then legals, they're probably an outside company. The accounts department is internal. We have a production accountant, and we crew up the production accounting department. And then we've got costume, makeup, art department, which has sub-departments in there. So, they have set design. Then we've got script supervision, or most people know that as continuity. Then we've got safety. Then we've got stunts. Sometimes if we're filming around water, you'll have a whole water department. Then we've got the camera department, and, from the director of photography down to the newbie who's probably in the back of the camera truck, cleaning all the lenses and everything. We've got locations department, because at the moment, and I think, probably in some ways there'll be some benefit with AI in this department, because locations in Australia are quite difficult to actually find really totally 100% locations that are suitable. But yeah, so the locations department as well, we've got people out door knocking saying, hey, your house looks like it's straight out of this script that we're doing. So would you be interested in having a film crew in your house for a week or a couple of weeks or whatever? What else? Traffic control. So everywhere we go for a location, we have to have control particularly if we're filming on any streets. So we have to have traffic control. If we've got, when you see the scenes where people are in the back of a vehicle or driving a vehicle, generally that's either done on a virtual production screen, which is in the studio. But sometimes if it's really shot in camera, the actors in a vehicle that we then put on back of a low loader, and you drive the low loader around and it looks like the actors are actually in the car that's moving. Oh, and the grips and the gaffers, the lighting department, the head of the lighting department is called the gaffer, and he has his best boy or girl and all his lighting technicians. And then the grip, the key grip, is in charge of everything to do with moving that camera. So the minute they finish a scene, the key grip or his company grips will take that camera and they'll move it then. If they're rigging it off the back of a car, if they're putting it on the top of a building, if it's going in underwater, the grip department's always there to look after that camera. And, most people have heard about a dolly grip as well. They're the ones that have the camera sitting on the dolly and then that dolly's on tracks and gets moved forward and back. So every single job has some accountability to the creativity of the execution of the show. Like even the guys in the grip department, moving that dolly around. There's a beautiful scene in Moulin Rouge where the dolly just kind of dances through this scene. It's the tango scene. And for anybody who isn't there in that room, you wouldn't be able to see just how amazing the grip team was that day. But that was their influence on the creativity of that scene. So it's quite an incredible experience for everybody.
I must admit, I've learned a lot about film roles from watching the credits because I'm always blown away by the names, right? And I'm like,
Yes.
what on earth is a gaffer? What is a grip? What is it? Do you know what I mean? Like that none of these things give you any idea of what that job actually is. So I'm always, back in the day, well, what does this thing do? It's lovely. I love it all. So obviously you're based here on the Gold Coast, as am I. And, and we see filming all around. I've had filming at the top of my street. There's always stuff set up everywhere. The industry has changed here quite a bit, especially over the last decade. What has shifted from your perspective?
I am a Queenslander. Originally lived in southeast Queensland and spent about 15 years on the Gold Coast at various times, and then moved to Sydney for 18 years and came back about 5.5 years ago. In that time, we've seen such a significant impact of the film industry on the Gold Coast in particular, but also Brisbane and northern New South Wales. We're no longer an emerging production hub. Village Roadshow Studios, which is the largest studio facility in the Southern Hemisphere, has been there for a fair amount of time. But we're not just bringing Hollywood into those studios anymore. Like Anaconda, Balls Up, all these films, Apex, they've all been shot on location here on the Gold Coast. So not only do we have world-class studios and super experienced crew, like it's one of the things that we always hear, particularly from the Americans. They really enjoy their experience with the crew here because they're so professional and they're technically very, very, very good. So we've got the capacity to deliver these major international productions, which, yes, the government's been incredible on attracting the larger productions into Australia. And because of that, it has given the crew this level of experience, like when Ron Howard bought 13 Lives here and then he came back to do another one. So the film industry now is like this major economic driver for the Gold Coast. Last year, it was $900 and something million that production expenditure put into the local economy here. And, we try not to just regionalize the Gold Coast because it's the Gold Coast and Brisbane and, even to some extent up to the North Coast and down to northern New South Wales. Like there's this bubble of production. And yeah, like about 2.7 billion dollars, I think, is what was done in Australia last year. And we were up at over 900 million in that. The figures are like the recent productions have dropped like over 300 million into local spending. And not only does it support the film crews who are working on the jobs, but there's also ancillary services that we use, like, all the casts that we bring in, they're all accommodated. We've got to transport everybody around. If there are crew coming in from interstate or cast and crew coming from internationally, they're all going out to breakfast, lunch and dinner, out on the Gold Coast or up in Brisbane. Honeymoon with Harry. They've been getting a lot of publicity out of Brisbane over the last couple of weeks. So yes, at transport, hospitality, construction, like with some of the sets that they build at Village Roadshow, you can't imagine the construction that goes into that, even with the building of those sets, like the molds and everything, like particularly if you're doing a sci-fi or those kind of things, like that's all made here either locally or quite locally. And so, so it has very far-reaching effects.
You've launched Film Freelancers. What sort of problem were you trying to solve there, and how's that evolved for you?
It was an evolution, Terri. So I crewed 3 different jobs, one in Byron Bay, one in Cairns, and one in Perth. And at the time, those regions were supported by government websites of some local crew, but not all, and certainly not enough. And so what I found was I was doing these call arounds all the time saying, local person, can you please help me find somebody who's got some film experience? And then, I'd leave that location to go on to the next job, and then I'd meet someone or hear of somebody, and they had super amounts of experience and were a head of department or a second in charge, and just the search just never dug them up. So for the production, it was challenging because that's wasting a lot of the production manager's time trying to, find people all the time. And then there were a crew that were missing out on the opportunities because I just didn't know they were there. So after that experience in those 3 locations, and it's a much longer story, but it became obvious that for the Gold Coast in particular, we don't have a directory. We don't have any way of a production, either a local production, an interstate production, or an international production, to land into the Gold Coast and go, well, okay, where do I find my crew? So I came up with this idea of creating a professional film crew directory for the Gold Coast, Brisbane, and as I was saying before, that bubble that exists up to the Sunshine Coast and down to northern New South Wales. And on the directory, it actually lists where the professional crew live, so that if you're crewing up in Brisbane, then you can approach Brisbane crew. If you're crewing on the Gold Coast, you can crew Gold Coast crew. If you're in northern New South Wales, you can approach the northern New South Wales crew. And I'm very happy to say that I only launched in January unofficially, because we've still got some people yet to publish their profile. I've nearly hit 200 crew. As I mentioned, I've only been back on the Gold Coast for 5.5 years. And really, this has become very evident, mostly since 2022 when Ron Howard was here. He said he loves the Gold Coast. He loves filming here. He loves the crew. The challenge for the Gold Coast is that when there's 1 or 2 big shows, you run out of crew. Now, that's not entirely true. There's about 1,800 crew listed in this bubble area, but how do you find them? I ended up being the one that took that to task and did something about it. Here we are, punching out over $900 million worth of film production on the Gold Coast, and you can't just keep going back to the same pool of people all the time, because 1, you find that they're not available when the next show's starting, and 2, that burns people out and holds other people out from having an opportunity to jump on board.
So for someone who's wanting to enter the screen industry, what does treat it like a profession from day one actually mean?
Well, I lecture at TAFE about getting into the film industry at TAFE Coomera in the screen onboarding course. And I say to the class jokingly, did anybody's dentist get discovered in a cafe? You know, just sitting there hoping to be a dentist one day and somebody gave him a break and they're like, no. And I'm like, well, what did your dentist do to become a dentist? And then they start to think about it from a professional sense. And it's like, okay, well, they probably went and studied and then they would have done some interning. And it's the same career progression as anything else. Like you start at the bottom. If you're going to become a lawyer, you start at the bottom doing your articles or whatever and all the research and, pushing around the mail trolley. And then, you've got to say, well, what's my next step? What's my next step? And you build that career with your experience and with your study over time. Maybe you've been to film school or, done some courses about getting into the industry. You come on board as an attachment. That gives you a bit of, breathing space to be on set or in the production office or, in the script writing office, to have people, mentors helping you and upskilling you, because going to film school doesn't really prepare you for what it takes to be on set or in a production office. So you kind of need to, do the bridging there. And there's now a company called Generate Crew that's their specific role that they're doing. And so then along the way, you've got to upskill. So say in the production office, you start out as a runner or a cast driver, and then you go to a production secretary, and then you go to assistant coordinator, and then you go to coordinator, and then you go to production manager, and then you go to line producer, and then, you probably go to producer. In the assistant director's department, you start off probably as an attachment, and then you the on-set PA with everybody, messaging you your call time and wrap time for the day before, like doing very basic spreadsheet work on set. But then you get the opportunity to become a third AD and then a second AD or a second, and then work your way up to a first AD. So there's always training, upskilling. You've got to be professional. We have a saying in the film industry, you're only as good as your last job. Once you get to a level of maybe even as a coordinator or a senior coordinator, certainly once you're looking at becoming a production manager, a line producer, or a props master, or an art director, or a production designer, then you start looking for your representation to get yourself an agent. And look, runners have agents too, particularly if you're working in the television commercial side of our industry, because you just need access to a bunch of crew. And so if you're specifically after television commercials, you almost must have an agent because they're the ones that are going to manage your diary for you as well. And, I think absolutely you have to have a commitment to continually developing your craft, because crew are effectively running their own small business. Like even though, say you're working on a film or a series, they're going to only employ you for that length of time, however long pre and the shoot goes for. And then next minute that show's finished and you've got to have a side hustle or find some other way to, bring the money in, or do your upskilling in between jobs, because, we ebb and flow. So 1 minute you're on and you're part of the crew and it's really exciting and, you're on the road with the circus, and then next minute that's ended and you're at home twiddling your thumbs going, okay, what next? So not only do you have to concentrate on skilling yourself, but also you have to concentrate on, managing yourself as your own small business. When I say to treat it like a profession from day one, it is a profession because, it's a career path. You've also got to think about it as I am running my own business and I'm my product that I'm here to sell. So you think about everything, it's always got to improve. And you've got to have somebody that wants to buy it or buy you.
Now, that kind of leads me into my next question. you're generally not looking for jobs as a cameraman or a cinematographer on Seek, right? So a big part of this industry, I imagine, comes down to networking. But when people just say, oh, you have to network, well, that can sound a bit vague. So what does good networking look like in this industry?
No, that's a very, very good question, because nobody's going to find you sitting at home. Like, as you say, Terri, like there are no ads on Seek, but certainly there are crew call outs that happen on Facebook and also on Instagram. Our support organisations like Screen Queensland, like TAFE, like Screenworks, even, Afters and NIDA out of New South Wales, they're very conscious of creating opportunities for people to network and to get to know people in the industry and to have an opportunity to, jump through the door and get a job. So, I mentioned before about the onboarding class at TAFE. Well, it's a 4-day course, all with industry professionals who come and talk about, a production accountant comes and talks, or an art director, or, I lecture about production and what happens in all the different stages of production. And I say to them, like, you didn't know anybody before you walked in the door, but now you know me. Now you know the film commissioner. Now you know the people from TAFE who actually often get crew call outs sent to them when they're looking for emerging practitioners or attachments. And then Screen Queensland, oftentimes they're having events that you can go to. So it's really, if you're interested in the camera department, you would join up with the Australian Cinematographers Society. If you're interested in production design, you would join up the APDG, the Australian Production Designers Guild. So there's guilds and there are associations specifically for whatever department that you want to go into. So connecting with people who are already in the industry, or going through TAFE or Screen Queensland or Screenworks when there are opportunities that are presented, looking for emerging practitioners, that's where you've got to be putting yourself all the time. We're very, very, very lucky on the Gold Coast that the last number of years we've hosted the AACTA Awards, the AACTA Awards, the Australian Academy of Cinema and Television Arts. And we've also hosted the Screen Producers Conference. So they're two of the premier events in Australia, and they've been happening on the Gold Coast for the last couple of years. Then we've got the Gold Coast Film Festival that runs every year. We've got the Brisbane International Film Festival that I think that's having a break at the moment, but that happens up in Brisbane. So if you're wanting to network, you've got to put yourself where the crews are, and it's those kind of events. And say with the Gold Coast Film Festival, they have a opening night, a closing night. Guess who can buy a ticket? Anyone. At the AACTA Awards, they have an opening night, a closing night. Guess who can buy a ticket? It's expensive, but anyone, right? So it's not like it's a closed circuit. So I would highly recommend that if for your people watching, if they do know what department they want to be in, like say they want to be in the camera department, then join the ACS, the Australian Cinematographers Society. If you want to be a producer, join up SPA. Just join up ACTA, the Academy of Cinema and Television Arts. Like, with no experience, you can be a member. They have a level. Screen Careers is a national training organisation, and they have a bunch of online training courses. There's out of England, Screen Skills. You can join up with them. They have a whole bunch of training things as well. And the more you live in the environment in where you want to go, the more chance that you're going to make the connections and network with the right people.
We do live in a nice little bubble here, in that, and I don't know if it's just because I'm cognizant of it because I'm into film, or also having worked in two universities here on the Gold Coast that both run, that both have degrees in film and TV. So they obviously themselves have lots of networking. Part of the Actor Awards is the Screen Careers Expo, which I go to every year. I love going around and speaking to all the people there. I found you from going to a careers event and speaking to someone in Screen Careers who put me on to you, and that's just how it works. But you're right, we do seem to have a lot of events here that anybody can go along to. I remember one year, I know that I was already booked to go to the Screen Careers Expo, which was on the Saturday, and I just happened to be popping along to a film that was part of the festival as well, not realizing when I booked tickets for that film that it was also, all the stars were rocking up for the red carpet, and I just rolled up and went, it's a busy night tonight. What's going on here at Home of the Arts? That's our local centre. And yeah, the red carpet was rolled out and everybody was there, and I'm just kind of trying to sneak in. I'm like, I just want to see a film. I want to backtrack a little bit. Can you shed any more light on what people would need to understand about the freelance side of this work? You mentioned that, you're working and you could be all on 1 minute and the next minute you're twiddling your thumbs. Even if it's just touching on, things that people have to think about is, insurance and your rates and what do you do in your downtime? And you did very much talk about using that for upskilling. And is there anything else that you just wanted to quickly mention that people should just kind of have it back of mind if they're thinking about these types of things?
One of the challenges I find with people trying to sustain a career in the film industry is that they expect that it's going to give them continual work and they're going to be able to pay their rent based on that. You can't, that's not the right mindset for what we do and how we work. And what happens is if you put too much stress in that time in between where you're on and then you're off at home, you're waiting for the next one. It's like watching the kettle boil. Like you're not going to get that next job if you're all stressed out and tense. So, because you don't network properly, people kind of, if you make a call to anybody or you send an email, you just have like this air of desperation around you. And, your own resistance kind of holds you out from getting that next opportunity. So it's one of the things I've started to talk more about. There's also a company, Creative Arts Business. They talk about working inside the arts and entertainment industry as a small business. And so whether you're a photographer or you're an artist or you're a gaffer or you're a standby props person, essentially you're responsible for managing your work, getting the next job, making sure you've got your financials in place, you've got a good accountant, because if you string yourself out too badly, you'll just find that you just bump along the bottom all the time. Like the people that really do well in the film industry are the ones who are managing their careers for longevity. So it's not just going, well, where's my next job coming from? It's how am I going to sustain this year if I only get one or two jobs? Like, do I have to, pack shelves at Woolies? Do I have to play the share market so that, which is what, I had quite a healthy share portfolio. And when I was in Sydney, and if I, got strung out between a couple of jobs, it was almost inevitable. The minute I sold some shares, bang, I'd get a job, because I took that resistance out of the situation. So mindset and how you approach working in the industry as it ebbs and flows, because it does. You just cannot make it any other way. You're on a job and then you're off a job. Sometimes people are lucky going from one job to the next, but most people find that they want to have a break in between because, it can be highly stressful, a bit draining sometimes when you're basically running at a sprint for the whole time. You've got to take some time to look after yourself. That means probably taking some breaks in between, going on a holiday. So if you're on a job now and you want to have a holiday, then you've got to plan for that and you've got to be financially responsible and able to deal with the nature of freelance work. I mean, I met an artist recently who, wants to be a filmmaker, and very successfully shot his own film and then did his own distribution and traveled around Australia and did all these Q&As and packed out cinemas. It's quite amazing. And he said something really interesting. He said, well, I've been an artist my whole career. And so I knew what it would take for me to actually take this step into the film world and making it work for me. Like, he didn't sit around and wait for somebody to give him permission to do that. Like, he was, self-managing his situation, his career, and his profit as well, so that he was living a nice lifestyle. Because, it's kind of a stressful enough industry as it is doing the job. You don't want to be stressed in between the jobs. You want to be able to go, okay, I'm going to do some upskilling. I'm going to do some additional training. I'm going to go work on a short film. Like, I just lectured at TAFE on the weekend, and we had 30 something people in the class. We had a sound recorder, so want to be director, a writer, somebody that, was a hairdresser, wanted to come into the film industry. I said, basically, you've got a film crew in this room with you. So, you talk about networking, like right there was an incredible opportunity for who was just right in the room and what they could make the most of. So your attitude and your mindset, probably two of the most crucial skills to think about and to, know who you are, to be able to enjoy a successful career in a freelance business. Because if you're not on a job with a company that's employing you as PAYG, if you're running an ABN, maybe you've got a company, you will need public liability insurance, and you also need workers' compensation as well. And even if, you're just starting out in the industry and somebody says, oh, you come and work on a short film with me, if they're not paying you as PAYG and providing the right insurances, then you need to have your own. You've got to be prepared for those kind of situations.
That's all lovely advice. I'm really glad I asked that question.
Sorry, that was quite a long answer.
No. That's the whole point, is I want to get as much valuable information as I can. So I'll let people, talk till the end. Or what makes somebody valuable on a set or in a production office beyond technical skill?
Great question. So I was at the Screen Careers Day this year as part of the Actor Festival, and I had this young lady literally bounce up to me and go, hi, I'm such and such, and that lady over there said that you were the person that I should talk to because I'm super keen to get into the film industry, and I'm willing to do what it takes to get there. I was like, great attitude. Because of that approach, we chatted for maybe, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I recommended to her to actually go to the TAFE Coomera 4-day onboarding class. Next minute, I'm there lecturing that class. There she is in the room. She finishes the 4 days. Boom. Next minute, I've got her resume. She's taken everything that I've lectured about and updated her resume, and calls me, hi, Annie, just wanted to check in, is there anything else I can do or add or blah, blah, blah. I thought, I'm going to give this girl a break. And I rang a script supervisor, friend of mine, and I said, because I knew that they were just about to start an independent short shoot film. And I said, is there any chance that you might be looking for an assistant or an attachment? Because I've got a sparky one and I think she could be really good. That was probably off a feeling that I had and the way that young lady approached me. But she did get that opportunity. She went out for 3 weeks on set as the script supervisor's assistant. And, now she's got a credit. So more than the skills that she was bringing was her approach and her keenness and her willingness to learn. That openness, flexibility, because she basically quit a job to take those 3 weeks. And I'm not suggesting that's right for everybody, but if you're going to do this job, you got to be all in. It's not a half in, half out type of career. So yes, transferable skills are super valuable. But the first time I got my break in long form, I had been producing television commercials for about 12, 13 years. And I wanted to get into long form. So I wanted to go from short form, 30-second, 60-second, 2-minute commercials into drama. And the line producer who gave me that break, she said, I can see your skills. I can see what you can bring to the table. But more than anything, your attitude tells me you're willing to learn and that I can teach you what you need to know and for you to do it the way she preferred. So those personality attributes are more than anything the most valuable. And then if you bring some transferable skills and you've done some study about the film industry, done a couple of short courses about the film industry, if you've got a good resume that speaks to the job that you want in the film industry, you pretty well guaranteed that, the right networking and the right opportunities, and you'll be off and running.
What are the hard parts of this industry then that people should understand before they really romanticize it? Is there anything we haven't touched on yet that are not necessarily downers, but, things that people really just need to be aware of if they're considering this?
Yes, very good question. Well, the screen industry is very much a relationship business, and a lot of opportunities come through crew you meet rather than jobs that you apply for. So if you're not somebody that is able to seek out opportunities, you might be fine in post-production. We spend a lot of time in an edit suite or, working on animations or whatever, but you may not be, most suited to being on set where there is a lot of stimulation all the time. Like what we do is highly stimulated. You're thinking fast, you're acting fast, but with a confidence and a sureness. You have to get something done and get it done. Oftentimes very quickly you have to turn things around. Same with the production office. Like when I'm on a show, I can be wrangling over 300 emails a day. So that's not just my job that I'm doing, but that's 300 emails that are going ding, ding in my inbox all the time. So besides being able to cope with the ebb and flow of freelance living, when you're on, you've got to be on and you've got to have the ability and, a bit of a tough skin as well, because it's like you're in the trenches together. It's a team sport. If one person doesn't pull their weight, it can affect the whole rest of the team. You've got to have that ability to be able to support the team, play within the framework, and really do your job to a good, if not very good, standard. You're fighting fires, you're troubleshooting. It's happening quick, fast, and furious, and not everybody's there to give you a little pat on the back. Hopefully you've got a good head of department and a good 2IC. Hopefully, your line producer or your producers looking out for your mental health and hopefully trying to make the production a nice place to come to and a nice place to work in. Sometimes because of the pressures of the fact that you've got an $80,000 a day crew standing around and somebody forgot the costume, or the makeup girl's taking 2.5 hours instead of an hour, there can be some harsh response to that because there's a lot of money on the line. It is an industry where, you do kind of have to have not the thickest of skins, but a fairly thick skin to be able to go, okay, we're just going to get this job done and then we can all be friends. So I think more than anything, that's one of that flexibility, that resilience and the resilience comes in with the freelancing, with the ebb and flow as well. And seeing the big picture, if you can just keep focused on the end game and keep going for it, you'll get there.
After almost 3 decades in this industry, would you want to share what still energizes you about the work? What keeps you here?
Certainly, there are some glamorous moments. Like I was in Sydney last week and I went to the red carpet launch of the Hollywood Reporter Australia. And the red carpet moments, that actor, when Baz Luhrmann shows up, and it's the screening of Elvis Presley in concert, but they only happen maybe a dozen times a year. This is a lifestyle. This is an industry that it chooses you. And if you say yes to that calling and you go for it, then it's extremely satisfying. In particular, I love that the esprit de corps of where you're all working to the common goal. It's a year since I did a production in Perth called Run, which is currently on binge. I still have the feelings of being in that situation, in that production office with that team, and I miss it because it was such a great production, and it's a really good little show too. So if this is the calling, if this is where you feel that you want to go, you need to go, then I would say don't wait for permission. You have to make it happen, and you have to decide what role you want and then seek out those opportunities, find the people to build relationships with, develop your skills, and just keep moving forward to it. And there'll certainly be ups and downs, but it is one of those industries where it will constantly test you, constantly test your ability to grow. Like, your career won't happen by accident. If you don't know where you want to go, how are you ever going to end up there? And you have to be willing to be constantly taking the actions that are going to move you forward towards that destination. And, you know, as filmmakers, we're all storytellers, and one of the most amazing structure to ever think about is the hero's journey. The hero's journey is where, you know, our hero is called to a greater calling. He goes out into this new world he or she's never experienced before, hits all sorts of setbacks. Along comes a mentor. The mentor imparts some knowledge. The hero takes this on board. But even then, they're yet to still go through their greatest setback before they get the wisdom and they come out the other side and they beat all the odds, and you know, you celebrate the hero's journey. But that happens over and over and over and over. And every time you're doing a project or a production, you feel like you're on another hero's journey. But once you get to the other side, once you get to that destination along the way, it's extremely satisfying. And maybe it's more satisfying because it's not an industry for everybody, because it's creative, because we go from there's nothing here and next minute there's a set and there's actors and there's camera and we're shooting something, and then next minute it's, you know, on the big screen or it's on the TV, and you think, wow, we took that from nothing to that, where an audience can enjoy what we've done. And I look at that and I go, oh, we made that, and that's really something. I think we do what we do because it satisfies our creative juices, and we love what we love, you know, specifically because it's there on screen. And there's a magic about seeing something up on screen that can influence an audience and perhaps give them meaning for a situation or at a stage they are in life. I remember, you know, when I was about 30 something, I saw about 3 films in a row because I was overseas in the States, and each one of them kind of spoke to me at the time of my life that I was in and what I was looking for, what I was searching for. And so I think that's what I've always been really attracted to, is the impact of the storytelling on people's lives.
Yeah, film absolutely does do that, doesn't it? And because I loved it so much and because it was your baby, would you like to talk about The Way My Way at all? Because I just adored that film, and for you as an entire journey, because I know that was not a short little piece of work there. Did you want to talk about that, just to give people an example of, you know, the types of things we're talking about here? And that can be our encore piece for today.
Sure. The Way My Way. It's a very good story, actually. I was sitting in Sydney. I had met a distributor who was asking me what directors I'd want to work with, because I was producing at the time. And I listed such and such, and an Australian director called Bill Bennett. Anyway, the distributor says to me, I think I've got a script in my inbox from Bill Bennett. Next minute, we were meeting with Bill. He had a script about the Camino. I had seen a film a number of years before called The Way, which was about the French Camino, which is a pilgrimage that goes from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in France, across the top of Spain, across the Pyrenees, 800 kilometres to get to Santiago de Compostela. So Bill had a script that was like a Marigold Hotel, if you remember that film, on the Camino. Anyway, we tried for many years to get the funding for that, but it was just too expensive and we just couldn't put the right elements together. But Bill had also written a book called The Way, My Way, The Way, which is what Camino means, The Way, My Way, because he was, he won't mind me saying he was a bit of a cranky old thing. And he just somehow or other got attracted to the idea of doing the Camino, and he went and did the 800 kilometres. And The Way, My Way, it's a lovely book about his journey. And I said to him one day when after years and years of trying to get this Marigold Hotel script up, and we, kept getting told no, I said, Bill, well, what about your book? That's the story. And he said, well, do you think there's a film in the book? I said, well, I think that is the film. Anyway, because we then were flexible enough to shift gear on that, then next minute, Bill's written a script. Then we thought, right, we'll do it like a doco crew. And so our thinking kind of really changed. And then next minute, Bill's got a bit of money. Now we're having Zoom meetings. I'm starting to put a crew together. My husband had done a film with Bill many years before called The Nugget in Mudgee. That's where Bill lived. Like there was all this kind of fortuitous situations and, synchronicity, whatever you like to say, of where this film was just going to get made. So 6 years later, there we are on the Camino. We did a couple of weeks of where we went from one side of Spain to the other, doing recce's to work out where we were going to shoot. And then we brought the rest of the crew over, and then we spent, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks, and then we did the filming. So we had a motorhome that my husband drove, which was our toilet and change room, and our catering. And then we had 3 little black vans that we drove around in Spain, made the film. A few months later, Bill had an edit. He got a distributor with Maslow Entertainment. Maslow loved it. It opened the Gold Coast Film Festival, and it actually was the 3rd highest grossing film for 2024 in Australia. And it's still going gangbusters because it's got an international audience. So anybody who's keen on the Camino, or, mother, father, auntie, uncle, child has walked the Camino, they're all interested in watching it. And then, people who have got a calling to that Camino as well, they're all very keen to watch it. I think I have to say that was very much me firstly identifying that I wanted to work with Bill, then having this desire to walk the Camino, because I was unmarried at the time and I was going to walk the Camino to find my true love. So I ended up actually taking my husband, who I did meet before we made that film. And, we went over and made that film together, and we couldn't have done it without Cowboy Dave. So he was an absolute blessing. But yeah, it was, that was a really incredible journey and an incredible experience, and one I'll really cherish.
I really wanted to let you talk about that, because for me that's like such a beautiful moment in, someone who works in film. It's not like, oh, I just worked on this film. Like that's such an entire story around that. And again, like I said, it was one of my favorite films of the year. I absolutely adored it. And I'm very glad that somebody put you in my pathway, because it's been an absolute joy today. And now I'm going to go and raid your freelancer site for all of the other people that I can get on here, if you don't mind.
With film freelancers, we do have 2 opportunities for people who are keen to get into the film industry. It is a directory for professional crew, but for keen beans, they can join up on the homepage. They can join up for the newsletter. And there are training opportunities that we talk about through that newsletter, and then also via our socials as well. We've only been going for a few months on our socials, but I think we've got like 1,700 followers on Instagram already. And, we talk very specifically to opportunities in the film industry and also what's happening in the Southeast Queensland, Northern New South Wales industry as well. So even, just as an observer, there's that opportunity to jump on Instagram or Facebook or sign up for the newsletter.
Fabulous. I'll make sure that all of those links are in the credits, and I look forward to your next piece, whatever that may be.
Great. Thanks, Terri. Thanks for your time today. It's been wonderful to have this opportunity.
Before we finish up today, here are 3 key takeaways from my conversation with Annie. Firstly, film and television production is much more structured than it can look from the outside. A production is almost like building a temporary company around one project, with legal, accounts, production, costume, art, locations, safety, transport, catering, camera, lighting and grip, and many other teams all working towards the same screen outcome. The creative idea matters, but the finished product depends on planning, scheduling, communication, and thousands of practical decisions. If you're interested in screen work, do not only look at the obvious creative roles, there may be a pathway through skills you already have. Secondly, getting into the screen industry is not about waiting to be discovered. Annie was very clear that people need to treat it like a profession from day one. Research the departments, build your skills, attend industry events, join relevant associations, and make yourself visible to the people already doing the work. Networking matters, but it works best when you know where you want to go and can show that you are ready to learn. A vague, I think I want to work in film, is hard for people to help you with. A specific direction makes you easier to recommend. And finally, the freelance side of screen work is a major reality check. Crew may be fully on during a production and then suddenly off again between jobs, which means people need to manage money, downtime, training, insurance, and the next opportunity. The work can be exciting and deeply satisfying, but it also requires resilience, flexibility, and the ability to handle pressure without expecting constant reassurance. Loving film is not enough. To last in the industry, you need to manage yourself like a small business. If you liked what you saw today and you're interested in the film industry, head to my website, curatedcareers.com.au, where you can download a full career information brief sheet. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to like and subscribe to make sure that you don't miss out on our future content. That is all for this week. And remember, as I always say, you can't be what you can't see. So until next time, always be curious.